Good morning, everybody. I hope you are having a great day. And I'm excited to be talking about injury cause and prevention. So, today is our third day of our 5 days to the most successful try and run season yet. So, it's my belief that we have 6 pillars to having the most successful season, and I am combining injury prevention and strength. So we only have 5 pillars. We've already done our first 2 pillars. This is day 3. And again, we're combining injury prevention and strength. And normally I have those as 2 separate pillars in our team membership, and kind of just in my belief. I think that we need to have them separate when we are training, but for today and making this only a 5-day program versus a 6-day program, I think we can be efficient and put them together. So injury prevention is something that's really near and dear to my heart because it's something that so many athletes get injured. There's different statistics around the World Wide Web, or social media, or just if you're just in PubMed, like nerds like me who like to do research. But you'll see statistics anywhere from like 80 to 90% of all athletes get injured. Excuse me. And so with that being said, pretty much you are going to get injured. And so we want to do everything we can to help to make sure that you stay injury free. Now, for someone like me, so I'm a coach, and every time my athletes, oh, hey, Doug. I know. Let's say, as a coach, every time one of my athletes is like, "Oh my gosh, I have this niggle, I have this pain. What should I do?" And I'm like, "No." So we have to go back and make sure we hit every single one of our steps to make sure that we are preventing injuries. So this is kind of what's the process I go through as a coach and someone who, I'm not a physical therapist, so I'll just say that, or a sports orthopedist. And I always think it's best to have one of those in your corner, because there are times that you really need someone to put their hands on you and say, okay, do this specific movement, tell me where the pain is. And there's other times you maybe you've had an issue in the past, like IT band pain or Achilles issues or plantar fasciitis, and you're like, I know what it is. I just need to go back to my strength and conditioning, or I just need to fall back onto what's worked in the past. So it's good to have someone in your corner if you need them. So we're gonna break down. There's three different kind of categories of injuries, I like to say, and then we'll go through how we prevent those specific 3 categories, and then how we can stay healthy. So if you're here, I see Doug's here, so thanks, Doug, for joining live. If anyone else is here, please say hi, jump on in, ask any questions, make any comments that you guys want to, and then this video will stay obviously in our group, and then feel free to post any questions or comments, and I will upload our 3rd day guidebook. Hey, Leilani, as well after this injury our injury session. So the 3 types of categories that I like to kind of break injuries into would be, the first one's going to be anatomical or structural, meaning something is physically off with your body. It could be something like a leg length discrepancy, which actually is pretty rare, but it is possible to happen. It could be that you have something else just genetically is off a little bit with your body, structurally or anatomically. It could be that you are not firing the correct muscles when you're training. So you might have really strong glutes, but maybe they're not firing in the way that they should. Or possibly you're having an imbalance. So maybe you've gotten really strong quads, but your hamstrings aren't that strong. So those are what we call reciprocal muscles. So quad on the front and the hamstring on the back. We want to make sure that we're working our all muscles equally, but especially with those reciprocal muscles, sometimes if one is too strong, it can cause problems with the other one. So that would be considered our anatomical injury category. Second injury category is our training load, our training design category, meaning when we are setting up our season, or in our season, we have either had maybe a very challenging, training calendar. Maybe we have thought to ourselves, I can do this. I can train, 6 days a week, doubles, and this is not going to be a problem. Whereas maybe last year you were training 3 days a week, singles. So sometimes it's our design and how we set up our season where we're training either too much, maybe it's too hard, maybe it's just a combination of everything. And it's just kind of like the way that you've kind of put together your season, and everyone wants to go harder and faster, and they're like, if I just train this much harder, faster, I'm going to be this much stronger, fitter, faster. But in reality, if your body was here and then all of a sudden you're here, it's really something that's it does not behoove you to be in the best sorry, my dog's coming in to say hi. I don't know if you can see him. Hi, Lippy. Lay down, buddy. Sorry about that. Let me get back. But we don't want to just jump into something too intense, too much from where we were before. And often this category is one of an overuse or an overtraining injury. Now, the third category I like to have athletes look at is if they feel like they're starting to get injured, is their lifestyle. Then this includes things that people don't normally think of. They don't normally think of, how is my sleep? How is my nutrition? How is my stress level? Excuse me. But all of these things come into play when it comes to injuries. Someone who is sleeping 4 hours a night, someone who has an extremely stressful job, someone who is not fueling appropriately, maybe they're not fueling with good recovery nutrition. And it's something where they're kind of always starting their workouts undernourished or underfueled, and they're not recovering appropriately. The combination of your nutrition, your stress, your cortisol levels, your hormone levels, just your lack of sleep, which is going to also cause hormones to be off. This all really increases your risk of injury. So if you guys have had any injuries, or you tend to be prone to injuries, go ahead and look through these three categories. Do I have anything anatomically wrong? Do I feel like I'm not firing my muscles appropriately? Is there a muscle imbalance? Where is my training design? Have I pushed too hard too soon? How's my stress level? How is my nutrition and my sleep? So look at all that as a big picture, and that's where you want to start. Okay. So for those who are live, always, feel free to jump in and ask any questions. But those are the three categories, and I'm going to jump into how to prevent each of those three categories, or how to prevent injuries in each of those three categories. So with our category 1, which is our imbalances, our structural, anatomical, the easiest thing to do is, and it's not the fun one that most endurance athletes are like, I'd rather swim, bike, run, lifting, doing strength training isn't always everyone's favorite, but it is super, super important to have a strength program and injury prevention program. Okay, they're a little bit different, but we're combining them. So what I like to start with is a foundational strength. I have a strength progression, and there are 6 steps in the strength progression. And you always, or is it 5? 3, 5. 5, because I've combined 2 of them. 5 in the strength progression. The very first one, what every athlete should be doing, is a foundational strength training. Now, foundational strength training is where we are doing our core strength training. It is our very basic, just deep stabilizers, our glutes, our low back, our midline, which is pretty much our core. So things like dead bugs, it's a great one, bird dogs. These are all really good core foundational exercises. Core meaning core is in the core, and then core meaning these are exercises that should be the foundation of everyone's strength program. So after a foundational strength program, then you're going to move on to the body weight section of strength. So body weight is, as it sounds, body weight. So this is going to be starting to add in a little bit more challenge to the foundational strength. So if foundational strength was more, say, Pilates, and that, bird dog, the next step is going to be lunges, it could be wall squats, it could be push-ups, anything that's going to have your own body weight, but it's taking you from kind of base step one into base step two. The body weight strength and core, the foundational strength, can really be almost all year round. So as athletes who are in their, base, build, peak, probably not in taper, unless maybe if you're injury prone, you can keep some of them in there. But for the most part, it's an all year round strength program, except maybe right in your taper time frame. So after body weight strength, you're going to move into your general sport specific strength and conditioning. This is where we're going to add in weights to our program. We're going to be doing maybe the same kind of concepts. Maybe we're still doing a bird dog or a dead bug, but now we're going to have bands or weights added. Maybe you've started with your lunges, but now you're adding in weights into your into a lunge or your squats. So it was a wall squat, but now maybe you're doing weights with your squats. And after your general strength comes into more heavy Olympic lifting, power lifting. This is where I recommend having a person who can watch your form. So I don't generally give out a lot of Olympic lifts, powerlifting workouts to athletes unless I know that they have someone that can watch their form, in person, that I feel comfortable saying, hey, start to do this, because a lot of these lifts really require you to have good form. And if you don't have good form, you're going to set yourself up for injury. That's the last thing we want to do. So that heavy lift, that really heavy lifting, the Olympic, the power lifting, I love it. It's something that I do on a regular basis because of my my genetic condition with my collagen. It's how I hold my body together. But I want you guys to have good technique when you're using that. Okay, then the fifth one is going to be plyometrics. Now, plyos can be added in before heavy lifting. They can even be added in after body weight strength. But I do like athletes to have a good foundation of the foundational strength and body weight strength, and then start to mix in plyos in between kind of your sport specific strength and your body weight strength. And plyos are something where you can start with two-legged jumps. It could be bounds. It could be when you're jumping 2 feet and you're going to be jumping side to side, could be forward to back, progressing to single leg hops, progressing to writing the alphabet, writing your name with 1 foot hopping. There's lots of different ways to add in plyos. And plyos are really great because what they do is they allow your body to build up resiliency. It has a lot to do with like the stretch and the contraction reflex. Your body as a runner specifically, your body really needs to be able to have the impact and know how to respond to the impact. And often, a lot of times, runners are kind of heavy plodders, even if they're not, say, heavy as in the weight, but just the way they're running is a heavy plod. And so working in plyos, maybe 1 to 2 times a week, can be a way to really work on just like the springiness, the efficiency of the run. And as long as you've built up that nice progression, your body will be primed and ready to do plyometrics. I don't know, Doug, if you're still on, but have you ever tried plyos with your running? Because that could be something that might be in your in your best interest if you are if you're struggling with injuries, going ahead and working that into the program, and I can help show you kind of where to put that in. But that would be kind of the next step, I think, for a lot of athletes to try. And because they are a lot on the body, plyometrics can be a lot to handle. You're not going to sit there and do plyos for 30 minutes. You're going to start with 5 minutes. You're going to start with 2 minutes. Like, you're literally just going to start with a couple of minutes of plyos. Okay, cool. So yeah, Doug, so you could definitely work in plyos, and I would start with 1 time a week, and it could be something where you start with 2-legged, just hopping, and you could start with just a normal, just, maybe 30 seconds of 2-legged hopping, and then do like set a timer for maybe like 45 seconds, and you're gonna hop forward and back, side to side, and just do that, once a week, and then maybe bring it to twice a week, and then we could go to single leg and then see how your body feels. That can be a good way to kind of get that body more primed for the intensity and the repetition that as runners we kind of face. Okay, so let me know if we have any questions on that's my strength progression. For anyone in my on my team, you have access to all of the my workouts within that strength progression. Just let me know if you need help finding it, or if you need help knowing where you are in your season and where you can put in certain things, because we don't want to start like heavy lifting when you're in your peak. That would definitely not be good. Okay, so moving on to our training design. Now, tomorrow's day 4, is all about kind of like the secrets of how I coach like endurance training. So a lot of the training design is tomorrow. So I'm only going to just touch on this a little bit, just because it would be very repetitive to talk about this today and then tomorrow. But what we really want to do is we really want to look realistically at our bodies and our training plan and say to ourselves, do I have everything built in? Do I have recovery days built in? Do I have a nice progressive build? Meaning, am I training 4 of my 7 workouts a week are high intensity, or is it only 1 or 2? So it's going to be important for you guys to actually like realistically like take a step back, look at your training plan. If it's in Training Peaks or today's plan or an Excel document or a Final Surge, wherever your training plan is, take a step back and kind of like realistically look and say, looking at the last couple of months, where have I been doing? Have I been taking 6 weeks before taking a recovery week? Am I skipping my rest days? Am I doing more than the training plan says to do? And that's really important, to really be able to look at what you have been doing and just be realistic with yourself. Don't be like, yeah, no, I'm fine, because what happens is over time, we think we're doing great and our body's handling everything, then all of a sudden it just can't do it anymore. So we need to take recovery before our body gets to that point of no return. So, oops, hit my computer. So I want you guys to just kind of start to think about that. And then tomorrow we'll talk about kind of training plan design, more about load, and how we can ensure that we're not doing too much for our specific lifestyle, where we've been in the past, how new we are to this sport, things like that. Okay, so moving on to the third one is nutrition, stress, sleep, any of these lifestyle kind of things that can play into injury. Now, this is the one that really no one thinks about. So I want you guys to really start to think about what can I do in my lifestyle to help and make sure that that I'm not as injury prone as maybe I have been. So number 1 I like to look at is sleep. What research tells us is that every person on earth needs between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. There's actually an increased rate of all life mortality. Like, you have a greater risk of death if you sleep more than 9 hours a night and less than 7 hours a night. So ideally we're in the 7 to 9 range. Now I guess there's certainly caveats to that, like if you have the flu and you can't get out of bed and you sleep the whole day kind of thing. But on a whole, on your everyday, Monday through Friday training sessions and weekends, you want to make sure you're not shortchanging your sleep. For those that sleep 5 hours a night, I've been there. When you have newborn and young kids who call out for you, when you're breastfeeding and you're up all night, if you're happen to be going through perimenopause or menopause and you're having hot flashes, if you're someone that gets night cramps and you keep waking up at night and you're just like, I can't get a good night's sleep, it's really going to start to wear on your body. So I want you to think through, how can I best make my sleep better? What can I do? Can you guys start to wind down sooner at night? Can you shift your workouts around? So ones that were super early in the morning maybe could be moved a little bit. Whatever it is, I know it's tough. Believe me, I know. Most of us have to get up early and work out because we have kids, a job, life. We can't just take 3-hour lunches every day and do our training sessions. So I understand it, but I want you guys to think about it. Less sleep equals higher risk of injury. Next is going to be your overall stress. If you're someone that's super stressed at your job, maybe you have a super stressful job. Maybe it's something very physical. Maybe you're in the emergency room, or you're in the military, a firefighter, a laborer, construction worker, someone who's physically doing things all day. And maybe you have a high stress job where you're in the business world, and you're an accountant or in charge of millions of dollars of other people's money or something. You're a teacher, something that you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm pulling my hair out because the kids are so naughty. All of the stress comes into your injury risk. So thinking about what can you do? Can you do any breathing exercises, meditation? Can you use an app like Headspace or Calm? Can you have a wind down routine at night? Can you think about taking an adaptogen that deals with higher stress level or higher cortisol level, or trying to balance your hormones? So there's several adaptogens out there that are herbs that are helpful at kind of regulating hormones. Like one, if you have a very high stress life, L-theanine is a good one. That's a great one to take. You can try it and see how your body responds. It's one that's going to calm you down, kind of relax yourself, not in a way that's negative, and it's not harmfully like an addictive. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like an amino acid. So there's certain adaptogens and things you can take and try. And then nutritionally, I like to suggest to my athletes to get a full blood work panel done at least once a year, to check their vitamins, ideally to check hormone levels. Most doctors won't write that, but you can find like a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, or one of the online like Quest or Inside Tracker that has like a full complete screening of your vitamins, minerals, and hormones. Okay, so I recommend at least checking things like that. A lot of people are low in their vitamin D, iron, a lot of the other like minerals people tend to be low in. And just check it, because if your body is out of sync nutritionally, then you are going to be out of sync, which is going to lead your body down a path of higher risk of injury. Okay, so that kind of wraps up. Any questions, you guys, on like structural, on design, even though that's really maybe more tomorrow, or on the lifestyle factors for injury? Shout out if you have any questions on any of those. And then I have 10 ways to stay healthy. Okay, so first, number one is going to be see a PT or an orthopedist, sports specific ideally, if you're having any issues or injuries, or you just want to establish a contact with someone that you trust, that you can turn to if you happen to start to feel like a niggle popping up and you're just like, oh shoot, I'm just gonna nip this in the bud before it gets to be too bad. Number two, go ahead and start a foundational strength program. Most people say, hey, I've got big biceps. Hey, I've got, good quads, but they haven't worked their deep core stabilizers. Hey, Georgia. Oh, L-theanine. So it's not a vitamin, it's an amino acid. So L-theanine, which is THEANINE. And that's you can just find that in like a GNC type store or a vitamin shop, and I actually think I've heard it called like the sunshine pill or something like that. Or there's like I specifically take it with my cortisol levels. You're welcome. So I take one tablet in the morning and one at night, just because I have tested my cortisol levels and my cortisol levels are not great. So I take one in the morning and one at night. And I take other adaptogens too. I take ashwagandha and rhodiola every day. Can you touch on your 40? Oh, sure. Yeah. So the way I coach, and this we'll probably touch on this tomorrow too, Doug, but this the way I like to coach is I have made plans for athletes that is everyone, and then I have plans for those that are masters athletes and those that are injury prone. So I consider masters athletes pretty much anyone in their 40s and up. And then if you're injury prone, you get looped into that too. So I like to have a 3-week build and then a 1-week recovery, or a 4-week build and a 1-week recovery. If you're in this general kind of everyone can fit in it if they need to or want to, it's going to be a 4-week up and a 1-week down. So 4 weeks of build, 1-week recovery. If you're a masters athlete, so an older athlete, or someone that tends to be injury prone, we only do 2 weeks up and 1 week down. If I said 4 up, it's 3 up, 1 down, 2 up and 1 down. Sorry, I'm still finishing up my medicine. So I swear sometimes I'm like, what is my brain saying? So everyone is a 3-week up, 1 week down, or masters injury prone athletes are 2-week up, 1 week down, because what I have seen is that older athletes need more recovery, and you get just as much benefit from 2 hard weeks with a 1-week recovery that you do with a 3 weeks in one. Now, someone can always switch, and like if they're using one of my plans, they can always say, you know what, I want to try the 3 up, 1 down. It's just over the last 10 plus years of coaching, I found that most athletes do tend to have less injuries and perform better as a master's athlete if we have more rest. Does that make sense? Hopefully. All right, I'm gonna keep going to my list of 10. And then, so number 3, you're going to build from your foundational strength into your general strength, and you're going to keep a consistent strength program throughout your season. Of course, when you're in, okay, great. When you're in your, build or peak, if you need to back off the strength, you're going to step back to foundational strength. But on a whole, I want you guys to have at least a dedicated program, probably in your out of season. So if your out of season might be like November through March or April, making sure you have a dedicated strength program within that phase. That way we can ensure that you guys are as strong and as healthy as can be. Okay, next one is going to be use periodized training, which is what Doug just asked about. So periodized training means we are adjusting our training based on where we want that period to be. So base training, build, peak, taper, race. So we, instead of just doing any workout at any day, at any time, or training hard for 6 weeks and then taking a recovery week, you're going to have a very specific periodized program of either 3 weeks up and 1 week down, or 2 weeks up, 1 week down. And you're going to have a base phase, a build phase, a peak phase, a taper phase, and a race phase, and then a recovery phase, and then do it again, depending on how many races you have in the season. Okay, the next one is going to be the 10% rule. So there are some caveats to the 10% rule. The 10% rule means you don't build more than 10% each week. Now, I say there's caveats because sometimes you actually don't want to build at all and you want to stay where you are. So a lot of times with runners, I found that they don't need to increase their run mileage every single week. So say they're at 30 miles, they don't have to go to 36 to 39 to 42. They can stay at like 30 and 30, or long runs. So maybe their long runs at 10 miles or something. So they don't have to go 10, 11, 13, 15. They can stay 10, 10, 10 and build up a really good resiliency and efficiency before they increase. Or you can always decrease a bit. So And sometimes people actually can jump more than 10, especially on the bike. So like the bike, or it's just not as injury kind of, producing. So say you rode for 60 minutes, 10% would be 66 minutes. You might be able to go from 60 to 75, no problem. So there are definitely some things where the 10% rule doesn't always apply, but on a whole, especially for running, if you're building more than 10% a week or 10% within that long run, you are definitely, I found, to be at a higher risk of injury. All right, next one is we're taking at least one day off every 7 to 10 days. Sometimes I have athletes that like to take one every 10, which gets a little bit maybe like, if you don't need a set schedule, like some of my athletes are like, I love Mondays off, I love Fridays off. If you're once every 10, it definitely is a rotating day off. So you have to have a schedule that allows for that. But I like at least one every 7 to 10 days, because I find if you go more than that, it definitely increases your risk of injury and burnout, overtraining, and just mentally too. It allows your body the chance to be like, okay, I'm not training today. I can get something else done. Maybe not physical, like you're not going to be building a deck or something, but you can be, working on other things that you need to around the house, like going grocery shopping. Okay. Excuse me. Next, next one is mobility. It can be a mobility routine that's going to be pre-training. So say you want to do foam rolling before your run, or you're doing a dynamic stretching routine before your run, you're going to foam roll after your run. Whatever your mobility routine needs to look like, you need to, in my opinion, have a dedicated plan. Meaning, I personally like to have athletes do a dynamic warm-up, and that includes things like leg swings and could be lunges, just heel toe walking, getting your feet warmed up. And then after having a foam rolling, kind of stretching out with a foam roller or a massage gun, something to keep your body loose, keep those muscles, more pliable, and help keep you injury free. Okay, next is going to be, with mobility, it's going to be having a dedicated dynamic stretching routine before runs specifically. If you need it before the swim, the bike, I'm definitely a big advocate of just dynamic stretching in general. But on a whole, at least before the run, I want you guys to be doing several minutes of that dynamic warm up, like the leg swings before, which does create mobility, but it really will help to get your muscles firing appropriately before that workout. And then if we're going to move into more of like the lifestyle, so looking at your stress, trying to figure out what can I do to decrease my stress levels. Is it adding in some breathing exercises, 5 minutes a day of meditation, journaling, maybe speaking to someone if you're super stressed at work, or at your home life, coming up with some parenting help. It's parenting is hard. So that's definitely something I want you guys to think about your stress. How important is post-workout stretching? I tend to skip it. So I tend to think it is just as important as the workout itself. I find that when athletes skip a warm down and or a stretch, then they are not as prepared for their next workout. And I'm less a fan of static stretching and more of a fan of the dynamic stretching and or foam rolling. So I'd be okay, Doug. So say you did, a couple minutes of dynamic stretching to warm yourself up before a run. Then you go for your run, and then you finish your run, and you do a nice cool down walk. So just, bring your heart rate down, walk it out. And then if you need to, if you want to do static stretching, this is where you put it in. So put your static stretching in here. And then using either a foam roller for a couple of minutes, a massage gun, just loosening your muscles up. Now, if something like I tend to like swimming, I'm not, as you don't really need to say stretch as much post swimming. Cycling, I think you need to work a little bit more, and then running for sure, because running is, I think, the place that most athletes tend to develop the most injuries. And if you're skipping that post workout kind of mobility and cool down, kind of functional stretching, that's when things start to tighten, things start to not feel as good, and we develop injuries. I know it can be really tough to fit the time in. So I've even told athletes before to take 5 minutes off of their workout and put the stretch in. So say you have a 60-minute run. I would say something like, if you're not doing your dynamic stretching and you're not doing your cool down stretches or foam rolling, I would do a 5-minute walk and dynamic stretch warm up, 50 minutes of a run, and then I would do 5 minutes of a functional kind of foam rolling cool down. That way you're keeping the same timeline, but you're getting in your warm up and your warm down. That's how important it is. All right, I think we've got one more on my list of 10, and you'll have these 10 in the guidebook when I upload it. The last one is get your blood work done. Look at your vitamins, minerals, look at your hormone levels if possible. I know most doctors will not write blood work to check these things, which I think is crazy. But either having a functional medicine doctor or going to one of the labs that, yes, you have to pay a little bit more, but especially if it's just once a year or every 6 months, try to work it into your budget, because I think knowing where your body is currently is such a valuable tool, especially for things like cortisol levels. And the cortisol test I did was a spit test where you test your spit 4 times a day. You don't test it. You spit into a test tube 4 times a day, then you send it in. And I think it was like $100. Sure, it's $100, which is a lot of money, but I wanted to check my levels, and I knew I was going to be off, and I was off. And that allowed me to be able to say, you know what, I am not in a healthy place. And so in another month or two, I'm probably going to do another test to see if have my changes of changing my sleep. My nutrition's always the same, and kind of like my vitamins are all the same, but I'm trying to adjust my sleeping, and I'm trying to use adaptogens and just adjust my stress level. And I think I am doing better. So I'm going to be curious to see what my cortisol test shows. So that was my injury prevention. In the guidebook, I have some of my favorite exercises for kind of each of the main injuries that I see. So the main injuries tend to be IT band, shin splints, knee pain, Achilles, plantar fasciitis, like these kind of injuries. So in the guidebook, I have just a couple exercises. If you need any specific, if you're like, I always have this issue, do you have a favorite exercise for me, a favorite mobility stretch? Let me know, and I will tell you what some of mine are. And we do, and our team have our whole strength program, and I did a couple months ago a beta program with athletes for plantar fasciitis, and I'm super excited about that. I'm going to be releasing that hopefully soon for everyone else, but with a plantar fasciitis protocol for you guys to follow if you struggle with foot pain. But in the meantime, if you guys have any questions with anything, injury related or strength training related, lifestyle related, vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, let me know, and I will help you to figure that out. All right, and for your homework, go ahead and think about those three different injury prevention kind of categories. Your structural, anatomical, your training design and load, and your lifestyle. Think about those. Think about what maybe can you change, or what strength exercise can you add in? What can you do differently to better set yourself up for less injuries? All right, you guys, that's it. If there's no more questions, I will see you guys tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm going back to 10 a.m. because I have to drop my boys off tomorrow at their superhero camp at 9 o'clock. And then we will talk about training design and endurance, kind of like endurance training, kind of my own take on how to coach athletes. All right, you guys, have a great morning. Thank you for everyone for joining, and I will talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye guys.